Notice what we do in life. We're so afraid to create what we want in life. We're so afraid to swing for the fences. We're so afraid to create. We're so afraid to date. We're so afraid to step out there. Why? Because of our attachments. Your attachments are your biggest enemies because they keep you from every single thing that you want to create in your life. It's our attachments that bring our suffering, attachments to what we do have and we're afraid to lose, or attachments to what we don't have and we're attached to wanting it. How many people, things, causes, and ideals do you attach to? You need to lose your attachment to everything, including your own life. And one of the ways to do that is through understanding everything is temporary. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is one in this ongoing series, Conversations with a Sorcerer, and this episode is titled, Escaping Your Biggest Enemy. Ponder for a moment the greatest challenges in your life. Your fear is the biggest toxicity in your life because your fear keeps you from everything that you want. And your fear is driven by your biggest enemy. So your toxicity is your fear, but it's driven by an even bigger enemy, which I share with you in this episode. So if you'd like to learn what your biggest enemy is, and this applies to pretty much everyone on the planet, keep listening. Okay, so your biggest enemy, and I did say that it generally pertains, I didn't say generally, it pertains to everyone on the planet. But normally in this series, I capitulate a conversation that I've had with Don Xavier. And as I've said before, I have thousands of hours of recorded conversations. But this episode's a little different. It is about a conversation with him, but not in the way that we normally think about conversations. In this episode, I'm going to recapitulate a dream. Yes, literally, I'm going to recapitulate a dream that I had. And in that dream, DX brought some information to me and communicated it to me in the dream. Basically, it's a conversation in the dream, and I want to share that with you. So dream time, why a dream? The reason why is that shamans, they work in the dream time. And many of us think that, oh, dream time is when I go to sleep and then I'm dreaming, but I'm awake, so that's not a dream. But you know what? As I've said before on other episodes, it's all consciousness. Everything is dream time. It's simply a matter of awareness of which dream time you are participating in or in at any given moment. And as I said earlier, you might think that a conversation is 3D, meaning you and I sitting across from each other and we're chatting about something. And that is a conversation. But many times my conversations with Don Xavier are in a non-ordinary reality. Now, I've not talked about that relative to this episode or this series on the podcast, but I have mentioned before that shamans communicate in dream time and they communicate in a non-ordinary way. So when I need help from him, what I'll normally do is I will text him. I mean, he's my brother-in-law, so I can call him too. But a lot of times I don't want to bother him and I'll just text him and I'll say, hey, Don, I call him Don Xavier. I'm like, Don, I need help on XYZ. Can you look into this for me? And it could be maybe that I'm, pondering a business decision or people that I want to work with or something that I want to do or direction I want to take in my business or even somebody that I've met or whatever. And he will say, okay, I'll look and I'll satellite the answer back to you. And that's kind of the joke, the running joke that we have. And that's how we do it is via text. I tell him what I need. In dream time, he will bring the answer to me and I'll get it in dream time, an epiphany, an awareness, an actual conversation with him in dream time. but in some way, he will converse with me in dream time. But again, it can be metaphor, it can be an image, it can be a picture, it can be direct wording, it can be many different things. But that's where I'm going in this episode, was something that he brought to me in dream time. And I said that this is everyone's biggest enemy. And in this dream, in dream time, he was talking to me. We were conversing in dream time. And he said to me very matter-of-factly, he said, you need to lose your attachment to everything, including your own life. I've said that before on the podcast, but ponder that. That's so easy to hear and go, okay, that's an interesting thought, but really think about that. Lose your attachment to everything, including your own life. And as I'm going to actually demonstrate in this episode, your attachments are your biggest enemies. Why? Because they keep you from every single thing that you want to create in your life. You know, you may or may not have heard the Buddha say, he said, the root of all suffering is attachment. Ponder that for a moment. I know you probably heard it. Many of you have heard it before, but ponder that. The root of suffering is attachment. And you know, like a lot of us, you might think, Jim, yeah, blah, blah, Buddha, blah, blah, yeah. But stay with me on this, because this is profound when you really look at it and you dig into it. Now, I don't know if I will complete this entire topic in one episode, maybe two, we'll see. I'm trying to keep these around 30 to 35 minutes, but we'll see how much time this one takes. And we'll know whether we complete it in this episode or whether I need to do a second episode here. But my intention in this episode is to get you to start observing your attachments. Again, my intention is to get you to start observing your attachments, because your attachments are exactly what keeps you trapped in your pain and your fear. You know, the thing about attachments is we have very little to no awareness about even having attachments. And we learn these as little kids. I'll talk about that in a moment to some degree. But we don't even get up in the morning and say, hey, what am I attached to today? I'm going to go through my entire day, but am I attached to anything? What am I going to attach to? And as you'll see in this episode, you go through your entire day and you're attached, tethered, literally affixed to your attachments all day long. And I said just a couple of minutes ago, it's your attachments that cause you the biggest pain and bring the most amount of fear in your life. You think about every fear you have, minus the fear of falling in a loud noise, which are biological, but you think about pretty much every fear that you have, and there's an attachment behind that fear. And that attachment is generally that you're going to lose something as a result of that fear or something happening relative to that fear. Now, another way to look at this is that your attachments also keep you away from the joys, meaning the things that you actually desire and you want to create in your life. You know, to give you an example here, again, we're going to talk about this a lot more. Let's say that you see someone and you're like, I don't know who that person is, but I want to meet them. Maybe in your younger dating years, and especially men, you see a woman in the bar, you see someone in the bar or out and about or wherever, and you're like, I want to talk to that person, but no, I can't because they may shoot me down. They may reject me. Notice right there that you might get a lot of joy, and that person might get a lot of joy out of conversing with you. But you know what? Your attachments have stopped you. Your fear, your attachments have stopped you from walking up to that person and even saying, hi, my name's so-and-so, and then starting a conversation. Now, we don't think about it that way. We just don't. but our attachments keep us away from what we do want in life. Ponder that. It's your attachments that keep you away from what you do want in life. Maybe you want a better job, different job. Maybe you want to move across the country. Maybe you're not happy. Your relationship is dysfunctional. It doesn't work. It might even be abusive. But we're attached to the person, the job, the money, the air quote, the illusion of security. We're attached to these things, and we won't let go of the attachment so that we can be free to create what we want to create in life. The definition of attachment. The definition of attachment is a feeling that binds one person to a thing, cause, ideal, or again, a person, or something like that. So an attachment is a feeling that binds one to another person, a thing, a cause, or an ideal. So the question for you at this point, how many people, things, causes, and ideals do you attach to? Little easy pop quiz here. We talk about people and attaching to people. So attaching to people could be maybe you have a crush on someone, and maybe they don't have that same kind of crush on you. And in your mind, you're like, I want to date that person. I want to date that person. I want to date that person. They're not having those same thoughts. We've all been there, I think, at some point in our life. The truth is, we're attached to wanting to date that person, which, by the way, whole different episode, is a violation of their free will. We should never want to date anyone if they're not already in our lives. We should want to date someone that has the characteristics of that person. When you're holding the energy and the intention of, I want to date XYZ person, you're encroaching on their free will. But an example of attaching to a person would be having a crush on someone. Another example might be, oh my gosh, I just can't live without this person, but that person might not want to be living with you anymore. You know, another example could be, this relationship doesn't work for me anymore, but it's cozy, it's comfortable, my bills are paid, I get XYZ in life. All these things are attachments relative to people. How about things? And we've all been there, attaching to homes and cars, and mainly, I'll talk about it a little later on, attaching to money, or attaching to what money we do have. And the attachment is so great, it won't even let us invest the money we do have because we're afraid we're going to lose the money we do have, which we're attached to, when we could actually invest that money and make even more money. I've been there. And I may mention that in a bit. And when I say I've been there, I am not exaggerating in any kind of way. And I'll explain in a moment. An attachment to money or loss of money 20 years ago cost me to lose something worth literally $750 million. I'll explain in just a moment. But that's what my attachment, one of several times in my life, has cost me, is to lose money. And I'll mention something else here. One of my other brother-in-laws, he's retired now, but he was a mutual fund manager at Fidelity, trading billions of dollars per year in money and, you know, people's retirements and different things. He's got his pulse of what's happening in the economy. And he's often given me financial advice when I've asked for it. And about 6 months ago, this podcast is late October 2024. And about 6 months ago, I said, hey, Tim, gold. When do you think a good time to buy gold is? Even more gold. And he's still, even though he's not at Fidelity anymore, he's still literally talking to a lot of people there, a lot of friends. And he told me when gold was at 1,800, he's like, Jim, I think it's hit the floor. The people that I've talked to that have watched this for a lot of years say now is a good time to buy. I had quite a bit of money set aside in the bank that I thought about investing in gold. And I didn't because in that moment, I was attached to, I don't have time for this. I'm attached to my time. I'll look at it later, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even though that's a subtle attachment, it's still an attachment. Well, I could have bought gold when I believe it was 17, like 87 per ounce. As of today, I believe it's like 27.50 or something like that per ounce, meaning I could have made $1,000 per ounce. I'll tell you the big boo-boo that I made in just a moment, that literally, and I mean literally, I was told to invest in something, and I'll share in a moment, that would be worth $750 million today, my share alone. We attach to causes. Remember, people, things, causes, and ideals. We attach to causes, and that could be animals suffering. And then I know someone like that. Everything about, I mean, I'm an avid animal lover. I love animals, and if I ever quit doing what I do now, I would start a rescue shelter for animals, battered animals that needed to be rehabilitated, and they need to have homes found for them. That is a passion of mine. But I also know what I'm going to share here, I've shared before, but I'll share it in a different way. I don't like to see animals suffering, and I'm a dog lover. I have a dog and a cat, and I've had dogs for many years. I do not like to see animals suffering. That bothers me. Now, a friend of mine is attached to their suffering about animals being abused. And my friend is always, whoa, 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 animals, 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 suffering, suffering, suffering. And it's kind of like she's a broken record. For me, I don't like to see animals suffer at all. But what I know at a core level of me is just like you, animals also have their karma. And because they have their karma, whatever suffering they are doing is part of that animal's karma. I remember talking to Don Xavier many years ago about the polar bears, how they're starving because of climate change. And he said to me, it's part of the karma. It's part of the karma of that species. So we don't look at it that way, but again, we ego-wise get caught in the suffering, and then we suffer because animals suffer. That is attachment. And then ideals. And it is late October 2024 in the US, and you want to talk about people attaching to ideals? Oh my God. People attaching to their models of reality about what the world will be like if Kamala Harris wins or if Donald Trump wins. And a lot of people are, I don't know the right word, maybe even rabid about their attachment to their ideals, about what the world should be, what it will be if XYZ person wins the election. But what I want you to notice here, it's not the attachment to who wins the election. It's the attachment to what kind of a world we think we would live in if XYZ person won the election. But what I want to point out that most of us miss is it almost doesn't matter who wins the election, because the world that you live in will be the world that you create. I've talked about that before. The double slit experiment is that our reality organizes around our consciousness. So whoever's elected and whatever their ideals are, I can attach to that. I cannot attach to that. But if I have to attach to something, and I'll talk about positive attachment later on, if I have to attach to something, I'm going to attach to me co-creating the world that I want to live in. And there may be a powerful way for you to do it as well. So for right now, think about all of your suffering right now. Think about all of your suffering, all the things that cause you to be angry, fearful, these things. And are these things related to attachments to people, to things, to causes, or to ideals? And this is what I want you to notice. Most of our attachments are caused by our attachments to what we do not have instead of what we do have. I'll say it again. Most of our attachments are caused by our attachments to what we do not have instead of what we do have. Now, obviously, we are attached to what we do have, but we also get attached to what we do not have. And when we attach to what we do not have, and I'll talk about that some more, that creates even more pain in our life, and it's simply attaching to what we don't have. We often attach to the suffering of not having things. Ponder that. We attach to the suffering of not having things. A great example, and a very banal one, is you look at a 12-year-old little boy. Or I don't know how that happens. I don't know this day and age. I mean, I don't have a 12-year-old little boy. But I think back when I was a kid, and I think about a lot of little boys and girls, but in a different way. But I'm talking about boy attachments because I think about the things that I attached to when I was 12, and it might have been a pair of tennis shoes. Later on, later generations, it was Air Jordans. And a kid wants Air Jordans. They want Air Jordans. They want Air Jordan tennis shoes. They want Air Jordan, Air Jordan, Air Jordan. I don't have. Attachment. I'm all upset because I don't have. Look at all the suffering because I don't have X, Y, Z. What about maybe wanting a different place to live? And we attach to this suffering of not living in, that different place, that different location. So what I want you guys, please, you listening now, please understand is that we can attach to all kinds of people and places and things and ideals, but these attachments bring us suffering, and we have to let go of the attachment. Later in this episode, or maybe even the next, if I don't finish this one in the next few minutes, I'll share with you in the next episode about how I discovered to let go of attachments. And it's a process, to be honest, as I'll talk about in just a moment. But it's our attachments. Just plant that thought for right now. It's our attachments that bring our suffering. Attachments to what we do have and we're afraid to lose, or attachments to what we don't have and we're attached to wanting it. Either way, positive or negative, it is an attachment. I guess and start sharing now. And when I say I guess I want to, it's because I just put these together as I go. I might actually create a frame for these and, think about how I want to deliver. But think for a moment about people and attaching to people. Now, oftentimes, it's people we attach to people that we love. But on the flip side, we can also attach to hating on people. Look in the world. People do that right now. They attach to hating other people. But for most of us, we're attaching to people that we love. Friends, family, children. And I'm going to slow down here because it's vital. It's so simple that we miss it. But it's vital to understand is that nothing is permanent. You might have been attached to your parents and they're no longer on the planet. I wasn't attached to my parents when they left the planet, but they're no longer on the planet. You might attach to, a different relative, and then they're no longer on the planet. But what I see people doing a lot of times, lamenting and being in mourning, and I'm not exaggerating, I've seen this, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, literally 10 years after the person has left the planet, but the person is still attached to the ideal of the person that was on the planet that's no longer on the planet, which is why it's vital for us to understand, to fully embrace nothing is permanent. And if you're attaching to things are permanent, you're going to have one hell of a lot of pain in your life. So we have to understand, the way that I look at this, when it's time for me to leave the planet, whenever that might be, a day from now, a year, 10 years, 30 years, I don't know. But I always think back to what the Buddhists do in Nepal and Tibet. I believe it's both countries. I don't recall which one, but what the monks do there is they take the corpse and they leave it on a mountainside for the buzzards to eat the corpse. What they're doing is returning to the cycle of life because they understand nothing is permanent and everything is a cycle. And I get a kick out of Americans, and mainly I've seen it in movies and TV and all this kind of stuff. A movie recently where this person was looking at a casket for their loved one that was deceased. And the person selling them the casket was saying, well, this casket is lined with lead and this and that, and it will preserve your loved one for eternity. Hey, and everything's about marketing. Before you know it, they're going to say, well, this casket's actually lined with nuclear warheads. And if anybody tries to move the casket, they're going to be, blown up or something. And of course, I'm exaggerating. But we humans love to attach to other human beings. Nothing is permanent. I think anyone that's lost a child at an early age, and I've seen my parents do that, they've recognized that we don't own anything and nothing is permanent. Everything is transient in this experience that we're having. So one of the ways to loosen our attachments is to fully understand that and integrate nothing is permanent and everything is transient. So in that dream, Don Xavier said to me, lose your attachment to your own life. Let that sink in. Lose your attachment to your own life. Think about that for a moment. If you're afraid to leave the planet, you're attached to your life. If you're afraid to lose things, now, of course, none of us want to be reckless, and there are things that we have in our lives we want to hang on to. We all do. I have it, you have it, we all have it. But the reality is, I'll give you an example. I'm wearing an Apple Watch today, but I have a Rolex and a couple of nice watches. I don't wear the Rolex that much. I don't know why, I just don't. Mainly because it was a really expensive watch. And my Apple, and all it does is tell time, but my Apple Watch will tell me how I slept, temperature, and just about anything I want to know. So I generally wear the Apple Watch. But many years ago, I bought my first Rolex, and Don Xavier, prior to working full-time as a shaman, he started apprenticing with a shaman when he was a little boy. And then he was told to go on his own around 19 or so, I believe. And he worked in the business world. And he worked with a lot of people in New York City trading in jewelry and different things. And so he's always had an eye for finer things in life. And he looked at the watch. He's like, hey, cuñado, brother-in-law in Spanish, let me see your watch, when I first bought it. And I went back to New York. Maybe about a year later when I was coming back, I wasn't wearing the watch. And he's like, what happened? And I forgot what I think somebody stole it or something. And I'm like, I'm really frustrated about that. It bothers me. That watch is really expensive, blah, 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 blah. And he said to me, you lost that watch a couple of months ago, but you're still hanging on to it. That is attachment. That's attachment to things. So your attachment to your own life, we have to accept. I think this planet's had something like 100 billion people on it in this epoch of human history. And we're actually finishing our fifth epoch of humans on the planet. But we had something like 100 billion people on this planet. Not a single one has survived. Every single one left the planet. That is part of the experience. So the way that I look at it, because I have had pretty close to a near-death experience when I had a stroke and heart failure, I don't know where I was, even though Don Xavier told me that I did cross over very briefly. For about a day, I have no consciousness of even being conscious. It was like I was just floating somewhere in like an ether somewhere. I don't know, whole different topic. But I've learned at any given moment, this container can stop functioning and I would have to leave the planet. So we have to understand the container that we're in, it's literally just temporary. But notice what we do in life. We're so afraid to even play in the container. We're so afraid to create what we want in life. We're so afraid to swing for the fences. We're so afraid to create. We're so afraid to date. We're so afraid to step out there. Why? Because of our attachments. Note this also. When we attach to things in life, these things define us. Now, something that a lot of people attach to is nationality. And you see that big time going on in the world right now. You're seeing it in France, you're seeing it in Australia, you're seeing it in Italy, you're seeing it in Canada, you're seeing it really in the US, is fundamentalists are attaching to nationality. When last time I checked, there was no scanner when you're born on the planet, literally saying, okay, here's your little dog tag, you're an American, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. We simply own these labels and we attach to them because they're given to us at birth. Now, this is not a debate and any kind of conversation on border security or any of that. Okay, so please understand that. And that's stuff that I stay out of. You listening right now, notice what you're attaching to in terms of your nationality. So what we have to do is let go of and lose our attachment to all people, places, and things. It doesn't mean we can't have them in our life. It simply means that we have to lose the attachment. And one of the ways to do that, I'll talk more in a little bit, one of the ways to do that is through understanding everything is temporary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up this episode, and then I'm going to actually create a second episode with this one, okay? And then there I'm going to talk about solutions and ways and what I have found to literally start taking a crowbar and letting go of our attachment. Because whatever you're attached to controls you. Think about that. Whatever you're attached to controls you. And to demonstrate that, what about a woman, as an example, I can apply to men too, but a woman that's in a relationship and it's an abusive relationship. So she doesn't want to actually leave the relationship. She's attached, she's enabled, she's codependent. So she's attached in the relationship, and notice how the relationship controls her. And all of her friends and family are saying, you know, Susan, Bob is not good for you. I mean, he's hit you 3 times in the last year. Bob is not good for you. And this is partly self-image and self-identity also. But Susan is attached and she won't let go. So things that you attach to are like you actually grabbing, I grew up in Texas, grabbing a pickup truck, letting that truck drag you, and you're holding onto the bumper and you're being dragged behind the bumper of a pickup truck when you have to let go of the bumper. So to wrap up this episode, and we'll pick up this topic in the next episode, simply what we have to do, as I've said 2 or 3 times now, we have to start embodying the truism that everything in this container, your container, everything is temporary. And then what you attach to while you're in the container will control you. So hang on to that now, and we'll actually stop this episode now, and we'll pick up on the next episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.